All right, welcome to the Lindroth Hockey Podcast. I'm Jim. Andrew is actually stuck at work, and we'll explain the unique schedule for this show. But I am solo here today with our special guest that we've been trying to get on for a long time. And he's in Germany, and we would like to welcome Brandon DeFazio. So he is a Clarkson University product, playing there 2008 to 2011. Undrafted in the NHL, but started his pro career with a short stint in the ECHL with Wheeling before signing AHL deal with Wilkes-Barre. He plays for a long time in the AHL for various teams: Utica, Texas, Bridgeport, and the Providence Bruins. He we're going to talk about his call-up with the Vancouver Canucks, playing in the NHL. Then he packs up his sticks and skates, goes overseas to China, of all places. I can't wait to talk about that, with their new team in the KHL that they started back in, I think, 2016-17. And then he goes on to play in Finland. I think his former team moved from China to Russia. We'll find out. Also played in Czech and has spent the last 3 seasons and currently in the Elite League in the German DEL. Faz, how did I do?
You did good, Jim. Listen, when you played that many places, it's not easy to track down all the names and all the leagues and stuff. And it gets a little confusing there with the KHL. They're based in China, played in Russia. So I understand. We've been a lot of places. So I appreciate the intro, though. Thank you.
Well, and our listeners have got to understand, I looked just before you came on at our communication, and no fault of yours, no fault of ours. It's just the way when you do podcasts and you're dealing with active players, particularly. It's been a year we've been trying to get you on, and it's been like, yeah, can you do this? No. Hey, I can do this. Can you guys do that? Oh, no, we can't do that. So today it was literally, you kind of said, hey, man, I got some time today. It's like an 8-hour difference. You want to do it? I'm like, let's do it. So I'm glad we finally connect.
Well, I appreciate finding the time, and I apologize it took a year, but you're right. The time changed, and I think when we first started talking, I might have been having a kid close to that time. I just had my second kid a year ago, so it's just a lot of things happening fast, and they come at you. But I told my wife today, I said, I got to get this done. I said, I feel bad. So I'm happy to be here. She was happy to hear that I finally got it done. So we're in a good spot now. We're rolling. So that's all that matters.
Tell her thank you when the podcast is over. So take us a little back to Clarkson University. So you do well there. You've got over 4 years, 77 points, somewhere around there, I think. Talk a little bit about your the boys on the team, your coach, and your experiences at Clarkson.
Yeah, I think everybody has experiences with college. I've seen a lot of people that you have on for the majority that I saw do have college experience. Everybody has different experiences, but for me, it was great. It teaches you a lot about yourself when you go to school, because, when I went, I was only, 18, just turned 19. So I was one year away from being a true freshman. So I wasn't quite as young as some guys could be, but I still felt young in a sense of, probably more so than, the maturity level of a person. I felt more as a hockey player, I had a lot to learn. And, it comes at you fast, when you're trying to take on school and a new environment, and you want everybody to be, from a coaching standpoint, from hockey, you want them to be happy with what you're giving them, coming into a new situation, new relationships. But also undertaking the school part, and trying to manage that, where you got to stay at a level, right, where your GPA has to be, above a certain level, and all these certain rules. And Clarkson certainly was a school that wasn't one that you could just not show up to class. We were mandated, we had to be there every day. So there certainly was no hiding from the scheduling. And, what I always say is, you had to learn to time manage really quickly. So, for me, I loved it at Clarkson. Like I said, it was, it's an experience that I wish more people understood, it's specifically the small town feel, where hockey is the biggest thing in the town. It's exciting, it's really exciting to be with your peers. It's something almost unexplainable to people that haven't done it. When you're living in a dorm and everybody's going to the game, So if there's a big game, all your friends and your peers and everybody around the dorm are excited. And that feeling is, you can't replace it. I mean, it's completely different than playing pro or, playing major junior and, have the talent that comes somewhat similar. But when you have your actual friends that you're living with, that are coming to the games, they're excited to see you do well. They want you to do well. It also adds an element of pressure, right? Because you don't want to disappoint people when there's, so many people involved and everybody's so close. I mean, we only have 3,000 undergrads. I mean, it's a small situation, right? So it felt like everything was important, which is exciting. So, for me, Clarkson was that experience. And like I said, it took some time to find myself as a hockey player for sure, because you're learning really quickly and it's a whole new level. Junior was one thing, which I only played 2 years as a junior, and looking back, maybe I should have played a third and probably went a little later, but, I was happy to be there. And that team, my first year ended up being the best team I was on. So, we got to, be one win away from the Frozen Four and such experiences like that. So, I'm thankful I was there, but I certainly didn't feel like I was 100% ready for the experience just yet.
So what made you decide to do the collegiate route beside, well, I guess education could be the only one, but what made you decide to do the collegiate route rather than stick it out in the juniors and then try to go pro from junior?
Well, it was unique. Like, it's somewhat of a loaded question. I would say that, I wanted to be drafted in the OHL. I was desperate to be in the OHL. I think that what happens too, and I hope that there's some people that will listen to this and understand that, when you're in high school, the OHL seems, or let's say the CHL, wherever you are in Canada, it seems like it's going like this on you, right? And, I know for audio, it seems to be tunneling you into, or, this is everything. And for me, it was no different. My dad was drafted 5th overall in the OHL, went that route. My uncle was drafted 12th overall, went that route, so it was around me, and I was the oldest in my family. So the first to go through an OHL draft. It was certainly something that I wanted to do. I wasn't drafted though. So I was supposed to be drafted. I didn't end up get drafted, which, at that time seemed life ending, life altering. You show up to high school and I'll never forget they announce, who gets drafted on the announcements. And when you're not, and you're, 15, you really feel like, your world's over in a sense for hockey. Right. And thankfully, I had a mom that believed in me and pulled me up off the ground and said, this isn't the end of your story. And certainly had the experience of my dad and people around me, no doubt. But this pushed me to understand that, listen, hockey continues after the OHL draft. And, it quickly made me realize that it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it allowed me to find the time to find myself. But more importantly, the opportunities to speak to schools, take it a little slower. I had the opportunity when I was 17 to, sign and play in the OHL, but in the end of the day, my family, being that they came from the OHL side of things, my dad said, look, when I finished playing pro hockey, I didn't have a degree. He was lucky. He got right on the fire department. Don't get me wrong, lived a great life, but certainly said that, listen, I think you need to get your degree. And my mom was wholeheartedly, obviously, on that side of things too. So when we had the opportunity, we had to make that decision. I didn't have a scholarship yet, but we felt it was best to try to play junior A and see what happens. So.
And what made you decide on Clarkson?
Well, I'll say this. I had a really good finish to I ended up getting traded midway through my first year at junior, and I had a really good playoffs. And they were the first team to bring me down on a visit, to bring family down, my mom, my dad, me, get in the car, we drive up to Clarkson. You just couldn't beat that being your first visit, right? I had figured, I guess, in my head that there was going to be a lot more, happening, you hope, but I wasn't willing to sit there and be naive to the fact that this is a full ride scholarship, and I have humble beginnings, not humble that, we're middle class family that, you're getting offered the opportunity to go play for, the winningest college program at the time in Division I, right? I mean, there's an extremely high history. The school is extremely well regarded. I mean, it just wasn't a lot to think about. So I didn't dive into it too much. It wasn't so much like, hey, I'm comparing Clarkson to, X or Y, Z, right? It was, listen, this makes a lot of sense. They care about me. They're trying to get me now. I'm going to, accept the fact that I care about loyalty. And these are the first people to realize that, or see potential in me. And I'm not going to say no.
So I do want to stop here a minute, because you did mention your dad, your uncle, and you come from quite the hockey family. Give us a quick lowdown on your family. And I know for our listeners, they're thinking, well, it's Canada, every family's that way. But I mean, you guys legit hockey pros here. So talk a little bit, about the family ties here.
Yeah, we get, and again, I'm very fortunate still to this day to have to rebound off of, with my father specifically, being very close with him, to speak to hockey all the time is huge. But Dean, my dad, was drafted by Brantford back in the day, 5th overall, as I said. My uncle was, his youngest brother was drafted by Ottawa and played in Ottawa, and he was drafted 12th overall. So we have that. So obviously my father ended up playing in the NHL for 22 games with Pittsburgh. Obviously with his friends being around too, there was relationships that we created that way. In terms of outside of that, I mean, I have 3 younger brothers. My next one down went D3, played at Brockport. My next one down ended up being a captain in junior B. My next one down is now just headed off to Newman University to be the goalie there, playing D3. So we got lots of stuff going on. And outside of hockey, my other uncle Kirk, he was drafted in the first round of the CFL. So he was a football player. Runs like I think he was one of the first Canadians to ever finish the Ironman in Hawaii. So I mean, we got athletics all around us. My cousin. My cousin went to Queen's University. He was a goalie. I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, to certain degrees in varying sports, but certainly an athletic family, let's say.
Yeah, no kidding. So you're finishing up, and how did you do your little stint? I think you had like 9-10 games in the ECHL as you're finishing up college here with Wheeling, and then you signed your deal with Wilkes-Barre. But how did I guess it's a 2-part question. How did that come about with Wheeling? And then what was it like, the transition from playing college to now you're in the ECHL? These are guys that got families. It's a real gig. It's a professional. What was that like? But how did that come about?
Yeah, so basically, funny enough, my agent at the time was Kyle Dubas, which everybody in hockey would know that name now. But Kyle began as an agent and came down to Clarkson my sophomore year, and ended up going with him and Todd Reynolds. So basically, Kyle called me and said, once my senior year finished at Clarkson, and said, you have an opportunity. I know it's not what you want specifically, but you have an opportunity to go to the East Coast League with Wheeling. But I do want to tell you that, they see more for you. So, if you come and, do what you're supposed to do or what they think you're going to do, then they're going to call you up and give you a couple of games. But you have to understand, Wilkes-Barre at that time was like a 50-win team. They were incredible. They've always been an incredible American League team. So I had a pretty good understanding. If you look back when we just talked about, like, I wasn't naive to understanding that it was going to be difficult, because I understood situations, because I had, my dad and my uncle and all these people around, right? So, but I was okay with that. So I had the opportunity to go down there. Wheeling was an unbelievable team. There's been a lot of glorified stories these days with Bissonnette and all his things. He talks about Wheeling and all the stuff they're doing, but it actually is, a really high end spot to be, because they try to win there. And generally speaking, Pittsburgh will have NHL contracted players there. So for me, coming from school, it was amazing. Like, I was just head over heels excited. There was good hockey players there. It was high end draft picks. They were a good team. So going there was probably the biggest thing that happened in terms of transitioning, because what ended up happening was I played the 9 or 11 games. I don't remember what it was. I think it was 11. 9 in the East Coast, but I got called up. I got to play 2 games in Wilkes-Barre, and then I got sent back down. But I got to go on this huge playoff run, and so I ended up playing like I think in total with the playoffs and stuff, 26 games right out of school. So I never ended up going back to school. I had to do everything on the fly, everything online and stuff, which was difficult. But I also got 26 games of professional experience before I got to head off in the summer to come back to. So you're creating relationships with coaches, you're creating, relationships with management, all this stuff that was around. So for me, I'm really indebted to Wheeling in a sense, because one, they wanted to win. Two, they allowed me to play, and three, the experience was really high end. I think we ended up losing in Game 7, to go to the finals and lost there. I remember being torn a little bit between, I want to be back in senior spring and it's exciting and everybody's enjoying the last part of school, and and looking back, it was a sacrifice worth doing. It really created who I was going to be. It allowed me next year to come into camp, like I said, where people said, okay, yeah, I know DeFazio, rather than coming in and say, well, I have no idea who this kid is, right? So that helped me a lot.
Yeah. So kind of jumping ahead here, you have a great season with Utica. I think you had like 43, 44 points. And then you get the call up to Vancouver. So we're jumping ahead a few years here. What was it like to, first of all, you're a mainstay in the AHL. You got good numbers. You deserve the call up. You finally get the call up. Did it come at a time that you were expecting it, or did you expect it maybe a season before? Or, I mean, I'm sure you didn't care when it finally happened, but when you finally got that call up, how did you hear about it? We've heard so many funny stories about guys from the AHL being called up.
Right.
How did, who called you?
Yeah, so I'll take it back and I'll answer in two parts. I got the call from Travis Green, and that was the moment. But I'll take it back to the year before, because the year before was more important, because as you said, a lot of people think that this is their time and it doesn't happen. But I guess the way I try to communicate to people in terms of how, as an undrafted player, to just get the games up, that's all that mattered to me. But I felt I had deserved it the year before. And I will say that there's a certain point in your career that a lot of people listening to this will understand, that you feel you deserve something, and there's not a lot you can do to communicate that properly without coming across as, let's say, egotistical or self-indulged or your care you. But there is also a line that you have to be able to, if you understand your game well enough. And this is what I always say. I understood that at that time, the year before, that I probably deserved to play, and it didn't happen. But I was willing to be present enough, let's say, with where I was at, to say, okay, I need to say something now. Like, what's the worst that could happen? So I had said then, and finally vocalized, after 3 years in the American League, I said, look, I feel like, and in more a positive way, what can I do? Like, what else can I do? I had been scoring the year before. I had been trying to be a good teammate and sticking up for people and scoring big goals and doing the whole thing, right? So there's that point in your career where I feel like a lot of people let that slide. And if like I said, if you deserve it, you should always be able to be honest and say, how you feel. And maybe a lot of times people do it now when they don't. And I think that's also another story. But I knew that I was doing everything I possibly could to play in the NHL. And I also knew I was undrafted, so I was working against the grain. So coming into the next year, they knew that, okay, we probably should have given them games. And that's kind of how it happened. I started well. I had a coach in Travis Green that completely believed in me, completely changed my career. He taught me how to play hockey the right way. He taught me how to play hockey the way that we're seeing come through now in hockey, fast and up tempo and above pucks and being aggressive, but not just simple, not throwing pucks away. And he taught me that, that element, and that's what helped me. And then, he was the guy that called me and said, you're going to go up and play. I guess the unique situation about that was that I had already played Thursday, Friday, Saturday in the American League. So, one of the harder weekends you'll get in AHL, which many people have been through. But so I said, all right, so, playing Rochester and you come back home to Utica, you're hanging out on the couch, watching the late games, seeing guys go down, get the call. I'm like, oh, smokes. I got to get to Anaheim by the next day to play a 6 o'clock game in that time zone. And you're on this time zone and you've already played 3 games. So it was unique in a sense that I had to rush, had to hurry, but in a way it was just the way it was supposed to be. For my career, it was never going to be the path traveled. It was the path less traveled in a way, and the way I got called up was no different. It was going to be hard and no sleep and trying to find a way, but my parents got there. Everything was worth it.
So kind of I guess you can take a moment to either brag or just kind of take in the moment that, again, undrafted player, you earn it, you pay your dues, you get your spot. What was it like to play in those a few games, or just that first game? Was there ever a moment, maybe during the anthems or wherever, maybe you're just sitting on the bench, that you're just like, not that, hey, I made it, because you're going, man, look at what I've had to do and get to
Right.
Anaheim overnight. But was there a moment where you just said, for right now, this is pretty damn good?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's obviously emotional to try to speak to, because it's just, and everybody that's chasing a dream right now understands it, and people early in the journey can understand that this is all you think about, right? So, when you, and I don't say like you think about just when you're playing pro, like you think about this if you're a hockey person, since you were 5 years old, right? And it's hard to explain, but the biggest feeling that I had, which is really odd, but I had dreamed so much in my head growing up as a kid, when you put your head to the pillow, or, when I was 5 years old, begging my parents that I was allowed to just listen on my, the old radios they had beside the bed. But I used to have the hockey game, and I said, beg them, can you please put the Leafs game on to listen, right? And, that's how it was. I was a crazy, let's call it hockey nerd or whatever you want to say, but I was just absolutely obsessive, and I had been obsessive for a long period of time. So when I did finally actually do it, where you're playing in a real game, it felt like you had done it before. And it's the weirdest feeling, but it's just because if you really think about like mental strength and like how you think about things, and if you look at athletes now, they're very forward about the belief in terms of how you see things. That's just how I felt. I had dreamt it my whole life. I had seen it my whole life. I had felt it my whole life. I had been out there, because that's what you have to do to make yourself believe. And specifically when you're undrafted, it's that mindset that almost made it feel, like I said, that it had happened before, as much as it did. But it just, it had happened in my head so many times that, it was like, it was your dream right there. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, and again, being undrafted, I'm sure that has its own challenges, like you've already discussed, but you do have a lot of, in the AHL, you do have a lot of 1-year contracts. We've had on a lot of players that, complain about, hey, when you're a two-way player, if a team is stacked with a lot of one-way players, and now we're talking business side of hockey, really, but it's the way it is. When you've got a team that's stacked with a lot of one-ways, there's not much room. There's not much chance for guys on a two-way contract to get up there. So was it kind of going to this team, to that team, trying to figure out like, hey, where can I best fit in this NHL organization, or am I wrong on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I more look at it like, if you're gonna go this road of undrafted, then it's not gonna be smooth, and I had a full understanding like pretty early, like how business worked, and you see the contracts and stuff like that. I didn't pay too much attention, I would say. Like I would say like ignorant in the right way, that I wasn't too worried about what everybody else was supposed to be. I was more just worried about what I had to do. That helped me. Yeah, like the different contracts and such, it's just that survive and advance mentality. If you're appreciative, at least to get the two-way, that was a step in the right direction for me. Obviously, you're gonna be riding that line if you don't have a specific home. Like I said, like if you don't have that specific team that invested in you when you were 18, then that's the reality of the situation. That's the business's situation, because they put 7 years of development into someone that they're comparing to me. Well, you can't look at it just simply as a money thing, but you got to also look at it as a time thing. It's also a relationship thing. You have development coaches, you have scouts, you have head scouts, you have amateur scouts, you have head of amateur scouts, you have all these people that they didn't know who I was specifically. I was just a new guy that maybe a pro scout saw and, gave a chance, right? Whereas, the other guys, they're all fighting in the boardrooms. You know what I mean? They're all fighting in the meetings for their guy, and so on and so forth. But we understand where that leads, right? I mean, because everybody has a job to do. So if someone sat at a table and banged on it and said, "Hey, I got to draft Brandon DeFazio," well, that's putting yourself on the line. So then what that leads to is then everybody, in that room wants you to succeed because it's also their opinion. So I don't know if that makes sense, but like I never had that. I didn't have the banging on the table. It was just, okay, well, he's exceeded what we thought he would be for a 1-year player. He was a great leader. He helped our young guys. Thank you very much. You did your job, which I was happy to do. But that next step, certainly you need to have someone really put their neck out and say, okay, which I was fortunate, Travis Green and those guys in Vancouver, Jim Benning, Lawrence Gilman, like these guys did it the right way, at least to give me the 2 games. Right. So they were willing to put that, their reputation, say, hey, we're gonna do the right thing by this kid, regardless if we didn't have that 7-year relationship and the board, blah, 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 blah. We're gonna do the right thing, give him a chance. Now, other organizations are more difficult. It doesn't always happen that way.
So your last 2 seasons in the American League with Texas and Providence, you got great numbers, man. It's like the 2 seasons, it's like 90 points. So, and I think it was probably, your best 2 seasons that you've had. And then you get a contract to go and play in the KHL, which has its own opportunities and money. We've talked to plenty of guys that have gone over to the KHL. But what was the reason? Was it, hey, I'm doing well, I'm putting up the numbers in the American League, it just doesn't seem to be happening, so it's time to move on?
Yeah, that's exactly it, Jim. I mean, look at those were the best years I had. So it was difficult not to get the games that you wanted and all that stuff. But I should say that, it hurt my heart to make that decision because, like I said, this is your entire life is put into playing the NHL, and I wasn't ready, I guess, specifically to give up on it, specifically after my best year. I didn't feel like it was the right time, but I was, I guess, 27, turning 28, which with what they do in the American League now, it's not meant for that anymore. When I first started, it was starting to fade out, but more, it still had, some older guys hanging around. But I think there was only 2 players at the time, my last 3 years in the American League. It was, I think, myself and Cole Schneider. And we were the only 2 players in the entirety of the American League to score 20 goals 3 years straight. So I figured, okay, if I'm not playing games in the NHL and I did that, and I'm literally one of 2 players able to do that, then I kind of figured in my head, all right, this is probably not going to happen. And obviously there's an aspect to financials and different things, right? The money that was offered was something that I never had the opportunity to do. I didn't have the opportunity to be on big money anywhere. And like you said, it's still business. So it was kind of just weighing those 2 situations. If you did that, then this isn't happening. And then if this opportunity is coming, and I also felt like the KHL was the second best league in the world. So if I didn't have the opportunity to play in the NHL, the KHL was something that I thought in my head, well, hey, if you go have 20 goals, maybe you can come back and someone sees you differently. You never know. So it kind of gave me a little feel that like it wasn't over, even though I knew like, okay, it probably is, but there was still that, that small hope left. Plus, for my family, it was, the right decision.
So yeah, and again, the KHL is its own elite league, and a lot of NHL players, if not recently with everything going on, but they've said screw it to the NHL. I'm going to make more money in the KHL. But so you go on, and is this true? Because this is a part where I get a little shaky. Do you actually go to the Beijing on this team? I know the team specifically in the KHL was 2016. You were there, I think, 17. Was it actually in China at the time, and then it moved to Russia?
No, I was in China. Yeah. Yeah. So my first year I was there, we were based in Shanghai actually. Um, so we did that whole thing, me and my wife over there, which is just a whole different world. I would say that Shanghai is very westernized. A lot of people say like, holy smokes, how do you do it? I actually found that easier than a lot of places in a sense, because
Okay.
Shanghai being such a Western hub for, banking investments and so many other companies that there were so many avenues that you could spend time where people spoke English, and they treated us so well. We lived in incredible apartments with the most, ridiculous views. The whole thing was honestly like one of the best experiences I ever had playing that year in Shanghai. Like me and my wife couldn't have had any more fun, and the memories we made. Obviously there was downfalls with the travel and stuff, but no, we played in Shanghai and played in the Russian league. So I think one of the stats coming out of that year was like, I think we were on the plane for like 330 hours, which is
Yeah, that's insane.
out of control. Like, we would go like, I remember specifically like one time flying, like it was like 14 and a half hours, and you got to throw in like a bus on each end, and we chartered, so it was all right, but it's still 14 and a half hours, 15 hours on a plane. It's it's out of control, right? And you got to play the next day, and you change time zones by 8 hours. So
Yeah, that's insane.
it's just, yeah, it's ludicrous. It's really ludicrous. You're trying to be a pro, you're trying to do these things the right way. It's like at some point during that year, you're just like, all right, like you have to survive. You got to find your way through this. But yeah, it wasn't easy, but like I said, the experiences were pretty neat.
So your experience in the KHL, what was it like? Was it a little bit more rough and tumble? Was it more speedy, more open ice?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Like, I think a lot of people assume they assume that the bigger ice creates an easier game, but I found it extremely difficult. Like, I thought I couldn't believe the high end, like the teams. You have to remember, like then too was like it was very good. Obviously, things in the way they've happened now, outside of hockey, but also it's gotten a little less where they've got a salary cap and different things have happened. But back then it was a little bit Wild West. Like it was incredible hockey. Like I couldn't believe it, and it was a little bit rough too, like rougher than I thought. Like those Russians are no joke. Like they played hard. They were pros. You had guys that have played a long time in that league and earned their keep. And then you see all stars like Kovalchuk and Datsuk and these guys flying around. It certainly was a step up from the American League for me. And maybe something I was a little naive to. I only understood the American League before that, right? So it was good for me though. Like I really enjoyed it being hard every night. A new rink, a new place, all this stuff. I think to a certain degree, like I said before, like some of the podcasts and all the hoopla that gets thrown around about Russia, that was before. It's that was like the Super League. That was a completely different time. They've really tried to, when I got there, make things more like the NHL. Like I thought the TV coverage was high end, the fans were high end, the rinks were high end and stuff like that. So for me as an experience overall, hard every day for sure. Very, very hard. It's very, very hard mentally to, stay in it, to stay, focused, to be ready to play. And yeah, that's a league that's no joke, because your contracts aren't guaranteed. Every day's not, the next day's not coming for sure. And you got to be ready to compete.
So this is where I think you're going to have to explain to our listeners a little bit. So KHL, you've got some Finland in there, more KHL, Czechoslovakia, COVID-19. So where kind of bring us through briefly what happened, because it's kind of a, COVID screws up everything and you're playing all over the place, really.
Yeah, so basically I went to the KHL with Kunlun in China, and then I went to Finland and had a great year in Finland. I loved it in Finland. I thought that hockey was incredible also. That was another thing I was naive to. I just couldn't believe like in Finland, for such a small country, under 6 million people, the hockey was just so high end. Like it was unbelievable hockey, and like the fans are passionate, the whole thing, right? The hockey history there, just, it goes forever, right? And again, like we don't know this stuff until you're in it. And, that was a great year. Met some really, really good friends that year in Finland. Justin Danforth is a person that I talk to and speak to a lot, that's playing for Columbus now. When we had first started playing together at the line, these are the experiences that you get, but to see him now, from someone that just came from the coast, similar story to me where nobody believes in you. I remember watching that kid play in Finland and just being like astounded that he wasn't in the NHL. But 2 more years and 1 year in Russia later, and now he's full blown NHL player. So that's something I take from Finland for sure. Something that I really cared about. Something that I enjoy watching now is watching him play hockey on the big show, and something that was deserved. But and then I went back to Kunlun for another year. Same team. We actually based out of Beijing this time rather than Shanghai. So that was, another unique situation, taking in, these crazy cities. But and then decided in COVID with everything with the shutdown, it was hard. It was hard for everybody. Not unlike anybody else in the world. Sports were not impervious to the onset of trouble that COVID brought, right?
So where were you when everything shut down?
I was in China. So
okay,
that was unique in a sense that we didn't understand that at the time that was happening, right? I remember getting on a plane to Siberia and stopping halfway through, and basically the coaching staff and Kurt Fraser, a longtime NHL guy, comes back. He said, "Look at guys, we're never going back to China." And I'm like, okay. Well, at the time we had at least 20 games or 15 games left. I'm like, well, what do you mean we're not going back? Like, we have all our stuff in China. And it's like, we're never going back because we can't. So it's like, okay, why? Because we didn't know what COVID-19 was. I mean, that was just very, like, we're talking middle of January. I mean, people were just starting to think about what was happening. So quickly we see how things progressed, but we ended up playing the next 50 days on the road, and it was absolutely insanity. Almost in a sense we didn't make playoffs, which is almost better because we got out clean. We got back to Toronto, and then it was like 2 or 3 days later that it was like fully, you saw everything shutting down, NBA, NHL, everything, etc. The dominoes started to fall, and I remember thinking like, wow, like I cannot believe we're just this close to what was going on, and just had no idea, like, because nobody had the answers, and if you look at really how it continued, nobody continued to have the answers.
Right.
I mean, specifically, that was probably the biggest problem, was nobody could find them. Nobody really knew, okay, was this a 3-week thing? I remember the first quarantine being excited because I'd been in Russia and China and Siberia and Belarus and Kazakhstan. I was like, I don't care. I was like, I'll sit in my house for 30 days. Like, I have no problem. Like, I'll sit right here, ordering my favorite food, deal with my kid, my wife, and my dog, and I do not care one bit because I've been all over the world, sleep deprived. I was like, but I thought it was just going to be like a month fun thing, and then it was like 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5. I'm like, wow. I'm like, are we going to get back to playing hockey? And
wow.
that was a tough part, right?
So during the COVID, of course, everything shut down. Is it after COVID? Did you start doing your stint, and didn't you do some Czechoslovakia before you go to the Dell?
Yeah. So basically what happened was it kind of falls into the COVID territory. It was like, I was going to sign in Germany because that's what I wanted to do. Germany basically I had agreed to a contract, and like, it was such a disaster because they didn't know, like, I guess they had no idea, like, what they were doing. So they were like, we're going to sign you a contract. So it was like, thank God, like, this is over. Like, I have a contract to support my family. And there was like 3 weeks went by, and then it got worse. COVID got worse. It was like September. And then they were like, push the season again. And they're like, we can't do the contract anymore. And I was like, well, all right. So you're right back to that darkness of like, well, how am I going to do this? And that's what I was saying, like, sports, for the first time, sports, you can usually avoid most things, but you couldn't this time. It was right in the middle of everything. Sports were definitely going with the curve of how COVID was going, and Czech was playing. I made a decision that I had to play. Germany, as far as I understood, wasn't going to play, so I went there. And obviously, it wasn't a situation I really felt comfortable in. I hadn't played hockey in 9 months. From a hockey standpoint, I didn't feel good. From a family standpoint, I felt awful. I mean, I couldn't get my kid and my wife over. And again, it was COVID situation. Couldn't get the flights going. Like, it was just a joke. And I said, look, like, I can't do this. I spoke to a team in Germany. They finally, had agreed in Germany to let the hockey teams play with no fans. had a relationship with Larry Mitchell and Doug Shedden, two hockey guys that I knew well enough that they said, we're going to get your family here immediately, regardless of COVID. So I jumped on it and left Czech, and honestly, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because, German hockey is a lot of fun. It's very similar to the American League. You get a lot of imports that you've seen before. The league's built around people you understand, and the hockey for me made a lot of sense. And it was thankfully I had those guys to pull me into Germany, into Ingolstadt, because it was a lot of fun. It really was, and I was able to get my kid and my wife there. So.
Yeah, and I was going to ask about the level, but you just answered that. So you're doing well. And I don't know how many games you're into this year's season, but you've had like 60 points in the last 2 seasons, like 100 games played. So, man, you're putting up points like if not every game, it's every other game. So you're having a great time over there. Talk a little bit about the team, because I'm not familiar with the Red Wings. Where are you guys at, or where was the team last year? I know you weren't on that team, but tell us a little bit about the team and what to expect this year.
Yeah, so the DEL, for a lot of people may not understand like how supported it is, and I maybe didn't either, but I think what you just saw, it's a good time to ask a question, because you'll probably see it. But if people were to watch highlights recently, San Jose played against Berlin, and Berlin's obviously in the DEL, in the league I'm playing in now, and it's just a lot of fun. The league is really high end. You get really high end imports. You get a lot of people that are at the point in their career where they want their families to have a good life and enjoy it. You get that here with the schooling, the team and family atmosphere. But if you watch the game against San Jose, you see what makes Germany, and it's the support from the fans. Like it's out of control. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I mean, there's not a game that you'll see an atmosphere that's not enjoyable to play in front of. We have some of the best fans here in Shawinigan, which you mentioned, the new team this year. I mean, we get about 6,000 just about a game, but I mean, it's the loudest rink you've ever heard in your life. They're throwing stuff, they're chanting, they're jumping. It's just a whole different thing. And like I said, if you watch those highlights, San Jose versus Berlin, I was listening to the commentators, from San Jose saying, we've never seen a building never sit down. And that's the way it is. I mean, everybody's standing the entirety of the game. They've got their routines, they have their history of what they've been doing. It's more that soccer, football mentality of fan bases. So yeah, being in Shawinigan has been great. Obviously it's an early start, but the team's kind of turned things around. So for me, it's been exciting. Found a place to, like I said, I don't take it for granted to find places at 34 to play hockey. So to find one like this has been really fun.
So can you define your role on the team? Or is there one, or did the coach tell you had a role, or
yeah,
I mean, what is your role? Because you're saying, I mean, you're the vet player, but you're producing. So I'm sure you're not a guy who could just sit in the corner in the locker room.
Some days maybe I wish I could. It'd be a lot easier, but
yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, look, the good thing about age is that you do know your role, and nobody should probably have to tell it to you, right? I mean, by the time, this is my 13th year of playing, I played over 700 games now. Like, I have a really good idea of what works and what doesn't. So, coaches here, they understand that. It's not like they have to come to me and define my role. Like, I have a pretty good idea of what I need to do, bring physicality, bring, that morale to a team, plus obviously chip in with goals. And I think outside of that, without people telling me, but like I've been there, I've been there where people have helped me. I've had incredible hockey people around me, some high level human beings that, that's what makes the hockey world go around. That's why I believe this is the best sport in the world. It's because of the people in it. It's the character within it. And, that level of care that I had from a Ryan Craig, who's coaching in Vegas, my first year captain, to, I mean, it goes on, like Cal O'Reilly, Ryan's brother there. And, the relationships that I've had with older players, I know that I have these experiences to offer the young guys here. And, more so in Germany, I find that it's enjoyable to be an older player, because there's the ceiling is so high for German hockey, because it's not Canada where it's the craziest and it's the number one, it's blah, blah, blah. So they want to take everything in, they want to listen. And that's all you want, with your teammates and younger players. And I find here in Shawinigan specifically, we've got a great group of young people that listen, open eyes, full heart. They don't care if you want to go out and shoot pucks, they're right beside you, listening, adapting, following. And to a certain extent, I really enjoy that part of my role.
So, two questions. So you're kind of like, and how I would describe you is a great all-around player. You put the puck in the net, you can be a playmaker, you can also drop the gloves and stick up for your guy. So now you're you've got so much international experience now, but you come from that hardcore Canadian North American style hockey. I think you're 6'2", if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
So you're a big guy.
Yeah.
Are you the Canadian tough guy, all around guy when you're playing over there in Europe, or did you have to kind of morph around to the more of the Finnish, Swedish style of hockey, or are you just like, hey man, I'm the Canadian vet, this is how I play?
Yeah, it's probably both, right? Like there's a certain extent that obviously can't, like, when I started American League, it was a complete, without, sorry, mind my French here, but it was a disaster, like sometimes, right? And you had to be, I mean, you couldn't survive playing on a fourth line not being hard enough to do so. And it's not to say that that's how I feel I am about myself, but it's just to say that that's what you had to do. So I've been good at adapting, that's just understanding, and I always say that that'll be the most important part of me moving from hockey, whether I stay in hockey or I do something else. It's just that adaptation within each situation is so important. I couldn't run around in Finland and play just that way. First off, it doesn't make a lot of sense because it's just not the game. You can't sell your soul and expect to be yourself. So yeah, I still played physical, and don't get me wrong, that was always going to be the way I played. But there were, situations, each different style of where you're at, that whether it was in Russia, they hold the puck longer. You got to learn to possess the puck. They don't dump pucks. They pull them back. They regroup. Finland was the same. And then coming to Germany, you have to kind of get a little harder again, because the hockey is harder. It's more North American based. Germans play hard. It's going to be fighting for ice everywhere, more so like it was in the American League. So quickly adapting, quickly understanding. It always takes you a little bit of time each place you're at, but I always attribute hockey IQ to everything. If you can see and understand the game, you can see and understand how people are playing. You can see tendencies. I mean, slowly but surely, you give it 1, 2, 3 weeks. I've been around hockey my whole life, so I can figure out what's going to need to be changed, and what's working, and how you work with your teammates.
So before I go to what we call our little lightning round, which we'll find out some quick answers from you about some cool things about your career. You're recognized off ice quite a bit. I do know, I remember, I think it was in Providence, I think you got some recognition for working with the community, but you've always done that your whole career. So first of all, I guess it's, how important do you think it is for players? I mean, it's not part of the job description unless it's written in your contract. I don't know, you tell me. But how important it is for players to get involved in fans and get involved in the community?
Oh, I think it's just like, I think it's paramount, because if you really look at it, if you're, I think, I'll take it back. The way I was raised is just the way I was raised. So, that's how we were raised. I like I said, I had three brothers, and I had a family that always helped people. So for me, that was just the way I wanted to be. But I always thought, you had all this time anyways. I mean, realistically, when you're a pro hockey player, I mean, you're a professional movie watcher too. I mean, you have all this stuff, before kids, I should say, but, the time's there. Why not? I mean, I always said, they don't care who you are, people that you're helping. They don't know if you're Patrice Bergeron or Brandon DeFazio. I mean, you have a jersey on and you go and you help, and you show up for kids and just make them smile. In the end of the day, like that's what they remember. They don't remember that you were a superstar or a fourth line grinder. I mean, you always have the opportunity to change someone's day, and use it in the right direction. Like I never understood why not. And I thought specifically in the small communities, in the American League, it was just so important. I mean, you had if you look at Utica or places like that, I mean, you're talking to a small place that they're paying money to come watch you play hockey, and they're allowing you to be a part of their small community. There shouldn't be any hesitation to do the same for them. If they're coming to do that for you, then I can certainly make time to start an Alzheimer fund, or get involved with going to youth hockey, or so that's just how I always looked at it. And like I said, that's how we were raised as kids, that you give back, you do as much as you can for people. And for me, selfishly saying, it made me happy too.
Nice. So the lightning round questions, you can just say a name, a place. If you have a short story that would be funny along with it, the listeners love that. But here we go. And you can say pass if your just brain goes, I really don't know.
Okay.
All right. So here we go. Toughest goalie to score against. And this is going to be not from your collegiate years. So this is just pro level. Toughest goalie to score against.
I would say Jacob Markstrom in practice, because I thought he was absolutely lights out the way he competed. Obviously, we were lucky to have him that year. Probably shouldn't have been in the American League, but I know it's weird to probably pick someone that was in practice, but he was very, very difficult to score on.
Was it just his hockey IQ? Was it his size? What was it?
Both.
Speed?
Yeah, both, everything. That was a problem. He was 6'6", plus he could move, plus he competed. I had seen lots of goalies with size that, if it falls to the back door and you're off in practice, they're just going to let it get pumped in the net. I had a few, I should say, I want to say a few, but Markstrom was like that because his athletic ability was off the charts too at 6'6", plus his compete was wild. But Justin Peters ahead also, who's working with the Senators now, he was the same. And I always found that different goalies, different size, different, I'm not saying the same, but the same with the compete. And I thought that if you had a goalie in practice that refused to get scored on, those are the best ones. And those are the guys who won on our team. And I thought that Markey, specifically with his size, ability, speed, everything, IQ, plus that was hard to score
on. The worst ice conditions or locker room. And this is great because we've had a lot of guys that have played in Germany and in like Slovenia. And what had the worst ice conditions or locker room?
Man, these are good questions. This is really interesting. There's a lot of bad ice.
There's some rink, and I don't know if it was in it was in Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it was the elite league or their 2 league, but we've had like 3 players say this is the worst place on earth. So maybe you weren't there, but what do you think? The worst ice conditions locker room?
That is really funny. Oh man. I mean, I think the worst locker room might have been the old Binghamton visitor room. That was not high end. It was always seemed to be like really damp in there still from like whoever was in there the night before. It was just like wet everywhere. It was like the shower wouldn't drain properly. It would be like up to your like ankles. And it's like, oh man, it's like if you didn't know you were grinding out in the Iron League, you definitely did when you got in the shower after and the water's up to your knees and it's like, oh my God. But the ice is good there, and I liked playing there actually. Ice conditions, that's tough. I mean, San Antonio probably was just a wreck. Because it was just so hot and they couldn't control it. They didn't have the right people probably in there controlling temperature, going from basketball, concert, blah, 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 huge rink, like couldn't control it. Yeah, you see it in the DL all the time. You see it honestly with the big rinks, like Mannheim has a big rink, awful ice. Cologne has a huge rink. All the places that filter that are outside of the NHL, because the NHL obviously they have a level they have to keep it at, and they have people that it's their full-time job to do so. Obviously that doesn't happen here. So you see those big rinks that are switching concert basketball back and forth.
Yeah,
they can't keep up. But yeah.
Who's the player that can get under your skin? Who's the rat? Who's the guy that you just like, man, you just hate playing against this guy. He's just a rat. And if you don't want to mention a name because you don't want to mention a name, that's okay too. Maybe you can describe him, but usually this is the one where players are like, yep, here it comes, and they just go right after whoever.
This is hilarious. I don't know. I thought that Rich Clune was the hardest to play against. I won't call him a rat out of respect because what he did was hard, and it's hard to play on the edge like he did every day, but he made my life hard. That's for sure. I just felt like he was always in my ear. Or he probably wouldn't even care to remember it because he was probably doing it to so many people, to be honest. But, it was probably so constant for him. But I remember that he was always had something to say, and played on the edge. Yeah, like I said, not a rat, but certainly was gonna make sure that he knew.
He was there.
So no.
What defenseman was the toughest defenseman? Meaning not dropping the gloves, but was there a defenseman that they would just be able to clear you right out of the net? You're trying to jockey for position and you can't move them.
Oh man. Oh, there's so many.
I mean, you're a big guy.
Honestly, like there's so many that I could think of over the years. Like, I don't know. I think that's difficult because you tend to when you played so long, you tend to remember just what's happened now and you forget. But it seemed like, I guess I'll say this, it seemed like every time you played in the American League, my first 3 years, people were massive and unmovable in front of the net and tough and the whole thing. I guess I could only say, like, it's easier for me to say guys on my team and remember specifically how they played. I remember like a Rob Bortuzzo, who's with St. Louis, was like ridiculously hard in front of the net. Like he didn't let anyone, and he had an edge where he snapped, and lots of guys back then were like that. But I remember how hard he played. I'll say that in Germany, there's this guy, and you'll have to look him up at this. And he's one of my favorite players. He probably doesn't know this, but he's German. And, I'm always saying I really like him. He's probably just like, shut your mouth. You have no idea what you're talking about. But his name is Dennis Rule, and he plays for Mannheim, and he's like 6'5", like he's got to be 260. And you'll have to look up his picture after, but this guy's an absolute machine, and I think he's unreal. Like he snaps a good first pass, and literally if you're coming down to take a shot, you cannot get it by this guy. I mean, like his shin pads are as wide as, it's like, look him up after this and you're going to see what I mean. Just take a look at a picture of this guy, and that guy's a machine. So that guy, I would say, is as big and as hard to play against as they come.
All right, 2 more and we're done. This one is our favorite. What is the most embarrassing or craziest thing to happen to you in a warm-up or during a game? It's confession time. Or craziest. It doesn't have to be embarrassing, crazy, but it could just be something crazy.
I've been lucky. I've stayed on my feet for the most part. I see a lot of falls, a lot of stuff happen.
The blue line doesn't trip you in warm up at all or anything?
Well, you have to pay $100 to the team fine if you get shin pads on the ground and warm up. So I can't afford it. So I always try to keep the shin pads vertical and not get down there. Geez, I've seen guys fall like all the way into other teams' warm ups. Like I've seen guys fall skating in to stop for the national anthem. I think that the funniest stuff you see in warm ups, so is like the old school intimidation stuff, like outside of me, not embarrassing or different moments like that. But that stuff was wild. Like, if you've ever seen Trevor Gillies, for instance, warm up, I mean, he takes his helmet off, he's shadow boxing the air, he's got a towel involved. Like, I'm not even sure what he's doing it, but that guy was crazy, that stuff I thought was funny as hell. There was this guy one time I was playing in South Carolina, and they had a whole promo video before you go out, so you got to watch it. And he rides up on his Harley with no shirt on. I think his name was TJ Reynolds, and I swear to God, he took a whole couple laps with our team. As the enforcer is the other team. So he was on our whole side doing a couple laps, and guys were just like looking at each other like, what are we going to do? It was like, oh, I ain't saying anything to him. Like, I just watched him ride it. I just watched him ride it on his motorcycle with no shirt on. You go tell him outside of our warm up, I'm not doing it. I was like, he can just skate over here if he wants to, because I'm not dealing with it. But that stuff, that stuff was funny to me.
So you still got your career. Like I say, you're doing great, but I'm not sure where things are going to go. I mean, you got a family, and I know things change as you get on there, but you still are playing at a high level. Given that, looking back so far, what has been your greatest hockey memory? And this could be from when you're a kid.
Yeah. It's a good question. I like the question because it makes you think about the things that you've done, and it's always important. It's not easy to do while you're in it, but I come back to, surprisingly, being called up to NHL is obviously incredible and all that stuff, but there's two things that I always think about, and if you're always thinking about them, we've played so many different places, and they're probably there for a reason. Those memories. One was I got traded when I was 17 in junior. I got traded from the best team in Canada. We never lost at home. The day I got traded, I had to call my uncle and aunt. They were living in the town that I was playing in, because my parents were working, and I was just crushed, crying and the whole thing. And the night that I got traded, my old team won 19-1. So they clearly didn't need me. Everything was not going well. Cry your way home with your uncle having to pick you up, and you get traded at the game and the whole thing. But the best memory for me in hockey was going to my hometown team in Oakville. We ended up playing them in a game 7 where they had, like I said, never lost, supposed to win the RBC, the whole thing. And we won that game. So I always think about that moment because it just meant so much to me, from such a low point in your career to where nobody believed in you, to coming home and playing for your hometown team, to beating that team that was never supposed to lose. That was certainly something I always remember, just the elation of driving home as a kid, just so happy about hockey, and just so happy that you were able to prove yourself that you were needed and somebody wanted you, and that things worked out for a reason. And the second thing that I always remember in hockey is the team we had in Utica. It was really special. We had a really special group there. We had a special thing going because it was the first years that Utica had a team back. So it felt like you and the town versus everybody. And, we went all the way to the Calder Cup finals, unfortunately to lose in 5 games. But, that run was something I think about all the time. I mean, just the memories and winning, you will always stay with you because it's hard to do. And even though we lost in the finals, it was difficult to get there, especially what I always say about the American League. What people don't understand is that, you don't get paid, in the American League to play playoffs. And if you go to the finals, that's 60 days of not being paid. You got to pay rent, you got to pay tickets, you got to pay your car. It's not easy to do. You got to really have some people that really care about winning to do it in the American League, because you're not getting ahead specifically at all. You're actually losing money. The bonuses then weren't structured well enough that you weren't gaining anything. So you're really pulling together, and you're saying, we're doing this because we want to do it. Because a lot of people are all right with sliding out because they're saying, hey, I don't want to get caught in that transfer from May to June and that extra month of rent. And I get it. Those memories.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, man, that's a great way to end this. Hey, Brandon, this has been everything that I had hoped for. Andrew will be jealous. Like I said, we've been scheduling this for about a year now, man, and it was great. I can't thank you enough.
No, I appreciate it. Look, at any opportunity to vocalize what you've been through, hopefully help some people too. If there's some young people listening or so on and so forth, and obviously some funny stuff. I thought those questions were hilarious. So hopefully people enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys taking the time to interview me. I'm always humbled that people want to speak to me too. So thank you for reaching out. It meant a lot to me as well.